Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. Sorry it's a bit late. I've been a bit busy doing lots of theme park music projects. This interview with YouTube's Kevin Lynch does contain some strong language. Enjoy. We're welcoming to Musical Talk Kevin Lynch. Hi Kevin, how are you?
Good, how are you doing, Nick?
I'm very well, thank you. I've recently discovered you on YouTube, and I have to say you are one of the funniest people I've ever seen, ever. The angriest musical theatre fan in the world is how I think I would describe you.
Yeah, I'm kind of angry sometimes at it.
You say the stuff, I guess, that many people are thinking, but probably too, what's the word, too scared to say, would you think?
I try to not fall into the, traps. I don't think they're traps, but the same mindsets that most of the theater people fall into with, how everything is good. And I'm like, not really.
Tell us how you started and about your background, Kevin.
With YouTube, I started back in 2014. I was teaching high school at the time, and I didn't like it. So I was kind of in this mode of anti 9-to-5 job. I kind of wanted people who had a 9-to-5 job to kind of have something to look forward to on Mondays that wasn't work. So I created this thing called Musical Mondays, where I would just either do satire or some kind of hokey, not well put together musical thing every Monday, so people had something to look forward to. And that kind of started taking off with the YouTube not too long, about a year ago. It started to grow a little bit more. But before even YouTube, I started playing piano when I was 5 years old. I've been doing musical theater since I was in high school. So I've been doing a lot of, music directing and playing for auditions and playing in pits for musicals and sitting in the pit on Broadway to see what that's about. So I've been a little bit of everywhere as far as musical theater is concerned, and just music in general. YouTube has so many little sub communities and niches that I feel don't really get disrupted if you have one idiot that kind of screws it up for everybody. And I don't think about this just with YouTube, but I think with any medium right now, it's just oversaturation, and there's just too much. There's too many YouTubers and too many people trying to be famous. It's like the floodgates have opened, where before the internet and before you had this, there was only a small margin of people that you had to know in order to be involved on a larger scale. But now it's accessible to everybody. All you need is a laptop and you could do it. You don't need to you don't need to try to talk with producers or try to get your show pitched or actually create something of value and substance in order to have it out there. Now I could just make a video about any stupid old thing and post it, and people will watch it. And in some ways, YouTube is like a dumping ground for silly ideas and off the cuff creativity, where I'm trying to do less YouTube so I could actually focus more on writing albums or working on something. Not that I don't care about YouTube, but for me, it's like throwing a bone to the internet, really.
Or you start a podcast. I like to think that you and I put more effort in than just putting something on YouTube and talking about it, but we are expressing educated opinions to people that sometimes need to be carefully taught. I want to talk about Dear Evan Hansen and The Greatest Showman, because I have real issues with Pasek and Paul when it comes to their music. Now, I'm going to get absolutely murdered for saying this, but I'm going to take one for the team. And I pose a question to you, Kevin. Do you think Pasek and Paul nowadays are overrated?
I think they are, but I don't entirely feel like it's their fault. I feel like a lot of Pasek and Paul now is just very basic. It's very elementary writing as far as just musically. I mean, the chord structures are really not impressive.
What chord structures?
Exactly. It's just very, there's a lot of sus chords. I mean, but there's a market that listens and enjoys that stuff. But I freaking hate how it's being dumbed down and people are thinking that it's so good. And that's what infuriates me, because it's like people that actually have way more talent, not even talent, but just creative panache, if you will. You know, they have more creativity in trying to have the music mean something with the action. It's not just, you know, we got to write something for this movie, so let's try to come up with something. You know, I feel like it's the equivalent of somebody sitting down and taking a crayon and drawing a stick figure and selling it, and people are like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And it's like, are you kidding me? Have you seen other pieces of art that aren't so dumbed down and watered down to appeal to the meat-headed, mindless audience?
But then the argument you could say is that they're opening the musical theatre genre up to a whole new load of people.
Which is true. And Sondheim has done that too with some of his stuff being turned into movies. So now more and more people know about Stephen Sondheim because of movies. I have no problem with crossing over and doing that, but doing it in a creatively artistic way, I feel like is more important than trying to get asses in the seats.
Did you like La La Land?
To be honest, I have not seen La La Land. Nor have I heard the music. People keep telling me to listen to it because that's also a Pasek and Paul.
They did the lyrics, so don't be too put off by the fact don't be excited by the fact they didn't do the music, because I don't think the music is that great. But like Greatest Showman, people absolutely freaking love La La Land, and I think that should be your next video. I'm going to put my idea out there. You need to go and listen to or watch La La Land and record reactions as you go. You recently listened to Spongebob Square Pants.
Yeah, well, I listened to it and I actually saw it back in December. I thought it was more spectacle than anything. I like the bands that wrote the music. Like, I love Panic at the Disco. I like Aerosmith. I like Sarah Bareilles. I mean, those are some of the writers that like wrote the music for it. You know, I think it's fine having like crossover, but as far as true musical theater and true storytelling and true, as far as like, for me, a great musical is when the music complements what the story is about, or vice versa, or that they work together in tandem, and it's kind of this like ebb and flow of ideas and creativity and themes and things people could identify with and recognize, and there's text painting with the music, and you know, stuff like that I really like because that's creative, and it takes some more thought than just like, oh, this sounds cool, let's put it in, you know. And SpongeBob is one of those musicals that it's campy, it's hokey. I knew what the story was about walking into the theater without having read it. I went with my friend and I told him, I said, how much do you want to bet Bikini Bottom is going to be in some kind of crisis and they all have to save their lives? And we walk in, it's like this volcano is going to destroy Bikini Bottom and they have to figure it out. And I'm like, I knew it. It's predictable because it's commercial.
Do you think it would have been better? I mean, this is the issue I have with pop songwriters doing musicals, whether it's Elton John or Phil Collins or whatever. Do you think it would have been better, A, if it were not done by pop songwriters, and B, if it were done by one musical theatre writer? Or would that not work in the context of what the show was trying to do?
I think if you got the right team of writers, or one person to write it, I think it would have been better. I feel like in some ways it's also a marketing way to try to get people who are not musical theater people into musical theater, like advertising that, oh, music written by Panic at the Disco and Aerosmith, and now they're reaching out as a business, you know, strategy to try to get people who, it's not, oh, it's a Broadway musical. It's like, no, it's not. It's like Panic at the Disco and Sarah Bareilles and artists that are not anyway related to musical theater to try to get people in. I mean, they do that with Kinky Boots. They did that with Billy Joel. They did that with Beautiful. They did, I mean, jukebox musicals, even though this wasn't a jukebox musical, but there's been people that have written for musical theater that aren't at all acclimated to the culture of musical theater or understand it at all. But somehow they kind of make their way in, and it's mostly probably a business related thing.
I still think there's room in the world for a proper Billy Joel musical. He, A, has a musical in him somewhere, and B, there could be a very good proper jukebox musical done with his material, because I thought Moving Out was such a waste of good songs. It lasted about 8 minutes here, I think.
I saw it twice when I was like 14 or 15 years old. I think it ran for like 2 years or something. And it's like Twyla Tharp. Actually, I was watching an interview with him, and he was saying how he didn't even come up with the idea. So Twyla Tharp went up to him and said, "I want to make a musical off of your music." And he just said, "Okay." He's like, "Only there's one condition." He said he didn't want Broadway musicians playing his music because it's too sterile. He wanted rock and roll guys. He wanted people that could actually not play so clean, that kind of had some kind of life to them. Because, a lot of Broadway music is very sterilized and boxed up and it's not, if we're cooking food, it's not as rustic. It's very clean and neat and tries to look perfect on the plate. And that's kind of what I don't like about it, But Billy Joel said he was approached by her. And I feel like Moving Out it's like his songs are there, yes, performed by somebody else with dancing. I feel like there's no real through line. There's no real story. They tried to find one with Brenda and Eddie, but it was kind of like, it was like a Billy Joel concert performed by a cover band with dancing.
Yeah.
It was that's what it was. But the cool thing is I went to the closing night of that show, and he was there.
Well, there you go. You get an actual Billy Joel concert.
Yeah, and he actually performed, I think, 2 or 3 songs at the very end of the musical. He came up and he performed, and he was literally like 6 rows ahead of me down in the orchestra seats.
How could they not put Piano Man in it?
I don't know. Because I think Piano Man's a people's song. I don't know. I guess they didn't want people to sing along or something.
At least have it as anyway, did you start off with the pure intention of being not parody but comedy? Because, you're a funny guy. And did it grow from there? Or do you see that you're offering a service now that is still comedy?
I feel like my channel is right now a hodgepodge of a lot of really weird ideas. What I try to do with every video is not just react and say, this sucks or what the fuck is going on. I try to give people a reason why I think so, or try to educate them as to how to do it better or differently, or, people like the reactions and like the faces I make and how I curse and I just say whatever the hell comes to my mind. I also try to educate people in some way about just because you like listening to Hamilton or even like the older shows on Spotify doesn't necessarily mean you fit I love the role of Jekyll and Hyde. I would love to do Jekyll and Hyde, or even if I acted, I would like to be Jekyll and Hyde, but my voice doesn't fit that type, and it's just not my thing to do that. So, but some of these people, do shows that they shouldn't be doing. So I try to educate people onto better ways to do something, or how to project, or I try to make it an educational thing, to be honest, with humor. I don't think I write comedy. I think I'm more clownish in my approach. I very jagged reactions and it's very impulsive.
Yes, and very unique as well.
People inundate me daily with, listen to this, listen to that, look at this link, watch my show. I'm like, oh my God.
So what's bubbling away in your mind?
Well, right now I have somebody asked if I could do more of my favorite musicals and least favorite musicals. So in the next few weeks, I'm posting. Actually, I posted one today about my top 5 favorite musicals. I mean, I have a lot of musicals that I really like the music for. I mean, there's more than 5, obviously, but I try to consolidate it to 5. I would like to do. I have an ongoing list of YouTube videos that I would like to do. I have a teaching music series that I want to work on to try to help singers understand rhythm and time and how to read music, because I feel like that's such a problem when I'm working with performers is reading music, and I know it looks much more complicated on the page than it really is. And I went to school for education, so I'm kind of I want to teach other people how to, understand and read music and interpret it.
I'm down the road from possibly the greatest musical theatre school in Europe, and none of them are taught how to read music. They say it slows them down, whereas if they're played it by someone who can read it and doesn't hesitate over the complications of the harmony or the melody, they're able to pick it up a lot quicker. What do you think of that?
Well, I think everybody does have like a different learning style. Some people could read music really easily, and other people they look at it too literally. And for me, reading music is so natural. I don't really think about it because I feel like teaching people to be. I mean, they don't have to be fluent readers to where you could put something in front of them and they're like, oh yeah, I know how this goes. To have some kind of a semblance of what to look for when you get a piece of music for the first time, because there's a lot of information on the page. Even in the first measure of a song, there's a lot of information. There's the time signature, there's the key signature, there's the tempo, there's like markings that you might not understand. But I feel like to give people or musical theater people a general idea of what they mean can help them, because I feel like the way we treat singers now is just plunk out the notes and do it by ear, which that works in, under time constraints and stuff. But, at a school, I'm sure you have an entire semester or a quarter or whatever that you get to, practice that stuff with. Some semblance of music theory should be put into a curriculum for musical theater performers, because it's kind of important to know what the hell the orchestra is going to be doing under you.
Yeah, and that's what I also like about your videos, is that you talk about the musical structure of songs, not always the melody. I always think there's a lot, as a composer myself, and as you know and understand, Kevin, there's always much more interesting stuff going on underneath the melody than the melody itself.
Oh, absolutely. Listen to this. I mean, most of my YouTube channel people, I mean, they're young guys that it's like it's like ear candy. They hear it, and if it sounds like everything else, it's good. And it's like, yeah, but that's not. Like, do you know why they wrote it that way, or what the purpose? Like, Next to Normal, I think, is a great show because, all the harmonics they do with the strings that are just very eerie and puts you on edge, like listening. That's the stuff that's going on in the background. To an untrained ear, you would not. The feeling when you're in the theater and you hear the weird, harmonics that the violin's playing all the way up in the stratosphere. It feels unsettling, and that's kind of what Sweeney Todd was with the Dies Irae. He wanted to infuse the Day of the Dead, or Day of Wrath. I think that's what the Dies Irae means. It's like Sweeney Todd's, the characters, like, anthem, and it's everywhere. And in the Epiphany, it is everywhere. It is in that chugging, the chugging chords when he sings "They All Deserve to Die." It's buried in there.
This is a whole argument about musical theatre being commercial versus artistic, and it's been going on ever since Gilbert and Sullivan, probably. I read the other day that Frozen on Broadway is costing a certain company $50 million to stage. Yeah,
I think they're really capitalizing on Frozen because, I mean, it was such a big movie that I mean, of course, musicals, you make tons of money with that. You can make tons of money with that. Even if it's bad, people will still go see it because it's Frozen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If only you could pay for shows after seeing them, depending on what you think it was worth.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, shows would be paying me to come see their shows.
The elephant in the room, you could say. The room where it happens, you could say. Hamilton. I haven't found many videos of you talking about Hamilton. What are your thoughts on that show, if you've seen it?
I haven't seen it. I think it's great in terms that it opens up to a different market, and I mean rap and infusing rap into musical theater is great. I mean, Sondheim kind of has that a little bit with with Patter. So I mean that's
The Witch's Rap, for example, in Into the Woods.
Yeah, which I feel like in my head that's like sophisticated rap with clever lyrics and puns and alliteration, and it's more crafty than some of the other stuff that. But you know what? I think Hamilton's great in terms that it's not my kind of show. I don't like it personally, but people love it, and I think it definitely, I feel like, has opened the door for many other genres to like infuse itself with Broadway. But what I hate about it is is now every damn show that we're going to see going forward is going to try to emulate that kind of shit, and I'm going to be like, God damn it, you're not Hamilton, stop rapping.
Yeah, the technical display of the writing is astonishing, and I have been listening to the cast recording a lot, and the lyrics, like Sondheim, are very, very, very intelligent. I just don't think it's a very interesting story, but it's told in a very, very interesting way, which I applaud it for. Now, you said you want to come to London. What is the lure for you with Broadway down the road for you, Kevin?
Well, I would be going to London because I've never seen it, and I honestly think sometimes it's better than America.
I want to talk about your musical ability. Now, you said you've done MDing and teaching, but have you ever been on the stage? Because I know you do your performing on YouTube, but have you ever been in musicals, or are you always like me, a behind-the-scenes person?
I've always been a behind-the-scenes person. I mean, I did a one-act that I kind of not starred in, but that I was part of. I played that was like the only role I did. It was over here in New Jersey, but it wasn't a big thing. But I kind of, I don't know, something about a live audience I love, but I would much rather be in the pit or music directing, because then I feel like in some ways I have some kind of creative control over what's happening, and I get to, it's kind of like a management type of thing, which I'm really good at that kind of stuff.
And how difficult is it to get into the industry on this side, on that side of stuff in New York and America in general?
I mean, it is a lot of networking. I mean, that's with any business. It's not about who you know. I feel like it's about, talking with different people and getting trying to get your toe in the door. I mean, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and start playing Wicked on Broadway. You're gonna have to, talk to people and make friends and just work your way in that way. I know there are resources for you to be able to, like, I sat in the pit and watched Wicked on Broadway 3 times. I saw Les Mis once. I did Something Rotten once, Book of Mormon. And how I got those was I found the music director, who the music director was for it, and emailed them and asked them if I could just sit in the pit and observe the performance, because, this is something I think I want to do. And as you do that, you start to make friends, and you start to talk with the other musicians in the pit, and you realize that some of the people in the pit of musicals, like the one violin player or the 2 violin players that were doing Les Mis the night I went, the night before they were playing at the Met for the opera. So there's tons of opportunity. It's just about being persistent and consistent. I feel like a lot of people give up too quickly. They'll start, they'll reach out to a few people, and then nothing will really pan out. And then they stop, and they're like, well, I guess I don't want to do this. It's like, yeah, but wait, keep pushing. Try to talk to that person or this person, or email that one, or, I feel like you get your legs doing the community theater and the regional theater and the cheaper productions, and that's where you really learn skills that will take you to the, that Broadway stuff. So many people are like, I want to be on Broadway. It's like, yeah, but you know what? You really should once you get there, I'm sure it's great and the pay is good, but it also becomes another job.
Yeah.
You're there 6 days a week performing the same musical, on stage, and it eventually becomes rote. And doing community theater and regional theater and college stuff, you get to form different kinds of relationships, and there's a lot more room to grow, and you learn about, different teaching styles. And I just feel like it's a better environment. I feel like Broadway sometimes can be cutthroat. I know people that my one friend was in The King and I, and she said, the money is nice, but you're also paying New York tax.
Yeah.
And,
living in New York.
Yep. And that's expensive. And it's, unless you're like Alphaba or like one of the big leads on Broadway that actually get a substantial amount of money per month to do the show, you know, you're making minimum wage, to be honest with you. And then and then to supplement more income, most of the actors or performers do teaching workshops or something during the day, you know, at Ripley Greer or one of the other studios, and they try to supplement their income by teaching and stuff during the day, and then they do their show at night.
You have to watch on Netflix the greatest worst thing that could ever have happened, which is it's a new documentary about Merrily We Roll Along, where they found interviews done with the very young cast of the original Broadway show, which lasted, I think, 6 performances and then closed. And then they interviewed them nowadays to see how their careers have changed. And it's just absolutely fascinating to see these young, starry-eyed performers about to go on Broadway to do a show about young, starry-eyed people doing a show on Broadway, to have the show flop, and then have them in the future talk about the past, talking about a show, talking about the... Never mind, you get the idea. But I really urge you, Kevin, and everyone to go and watch that documentary. And this is going back to the whole commercialism versus art thing, and what sells and what doesn't sell, and blah, 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 blah. I just think we've had enough of these. We're doing a musical, fourth wall. The producers did it incredibly well. I'm seeing Young Frankenstein tonight, which also does it. Of course, Mel Brooks, will parody anything very well.
I love Mel Brooks. The producers, I'm not an avid fan, but I like I think it's great, making fun of, let's write a musical about Nazis.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I think it's hysterical because I actually make fun of musicals that way too. I have a musical called Abstinence, the musical, which I'm like, anything can be a musical. I took a shit this morning, the musical. It's just, it gets ridiculous.
We have something here called the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, which is the world's largest arts festival, and every year you get something, ! The musical, and I'm sure there has even been a musical called something, ! The musical. A trend have seen over the last 10 years is, let's take something popular and put it in as a musical. Now, the one you've talked about recently, tell us about that, smiley face.
Oh, EmojiLand. Oh, fuck me. I don't... there was a... I'm not sidetracking, but this adds to the answer. There was a documentary I saw where this professor from Penn State University, she's like a theater professor or something, was saying how the artwork or theater is a reflection of what is going on in our society and culture at the time. It's not like, we go to see theater and it's something new. It's something that's reflecting what's happening now. And there's a lot of comedy that's happening now. People are taking a lot of things lightly, and Trump is a thing and emojis are a thing, but they're so stupid. They're like it's just so dumb. Like, EmojiLand is about these emojis that are stuck in the phone after an update. I mean, you can't get any more dumber than that.
Yeah, you can. Yes. And EmojiLand, which will be the iPhone 10 version.
Oh, God.
The sequel.
Yeah, and then the phone crashes, or they steal your identity, or face recognition. I don't know. You know what I would love? What would be revolutionary for musicals? I feel like instead of rewriting shows or writing shows, how can you mess with people's senses in the theater? And my thing is aromatherapy. If you're going to do Sweeney Todd, figure out a way to have the entire theater smell like pies.
We've done that here. They actually did it in a pie shop. And I think that production made its way to Broadway.
It did.
It was an immersive production of Sweeney Todd in a Victorian pie shop where you could have pie and mash before the show, hopefully made of not people. When I saw Charlie in the amazing Technicolor Chocolate Factory here originally, I was hoping that they would incorporate smells. I think the problem is, how do you get rid of the smell? If you introduce smells, the smell has to be there all the time. And if you're an actor working in that theatre, you don't really want the smell of grease or the smell of dead bodies or whatever. And yes, I agree that smell is something that should be done. They're doing it in cinemas with the 4DX experience, which is quite interesting. Of course, it's been happening in theme parks, which is the other world I deal in, for many, many years. So I do think senses would be a good idea. I've seen horror shows where they have rice fall on you and fun stuff like that. But then it might detract from the music a bit if all you're noticing is the smell. I
think they could do it subtly. I mean, eventually, how we are as humans, our noses eventually get used to the smell. So once it smells like chocolate after walking in, eventually you won't notice the smell of chocolate anymore because usually it would dissipate. But
just go to the theatre in the summer. It just smells of BO. That's enough for Sweeney Todd.
It always smells like shit when you go into Dear Evan Hansen. So
that's the quote of the year, Kevin. I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for joining me on Musical Talk. Tell everyone listening where they can find your delightful family-friendly rants.
You could Google me, Kevin Lynch NJ. You can go to my website, kevinlynchnj.com, or you could just if you just Google Kevin Lynch NJ, like New Jersey, you'll find me.
And that's LYNCH.
Correct.
Kevin, thank you very, very much indeed. Have a lovely day. We look forward to all your videos, and we'll have you on again soon to discuss all the new crap happening on Broadway that you can go and see for us.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, have a lovely day. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
For more information about Musical Talk, please visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk. You can email us at feedback@musicaltalk.co.uk, listen to past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and follow our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.